Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 353. Newsweek has an article out from Barry Levine talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, and he talks about how she is just as much of a predator as Jeffrey Epstein. And I think it's a valid point for him to make, and it's an important point for him to make. Considering we have been talking about that for how long here on this podcast, we've known for how long that she is not just some henchman or his girlfriend or a love interest. She is a co-conspirator, a co-boss, and somebody who really was involved as far as leadership goes when it comes to this sex trafficking criminal ring. And a lot of people still don't want to put a stamp on it. A lot of people still don't want to talk about that portion of it. It's almost like people want to let her try and style herself as some sort of victim. So it's nice when we see people like Barry Levine, who wrote the book The Spider, come out and talk to a legacy media joint like Newsweek and give them the really real. So we're going to jump into this article from Newsweek, and we're going to see what Barry Levine had to say to Newsweek about Ghislaine Maxwell. This article was originally run in Newsweek, but we're reading it from the MSN-hosted site. The headline, Why Ghislaine Maxwell Was Just As Much a Predator as Jeffrey Epstein. Author of the article, Jack Royston. Ghislaine Maxwell was able to lure young girls and minors to pedophile Jeffrey Epstein because they saw the woman figure as a protector, a biographer told Newsweek. That's definitely for sure. Those girls were very comfortable with Ghislaine Maxwell. If you listen to them and you listen to their stories, that's one of the key factors and the deciding factors for them to decide to go and quote-unquote work for Jeffrey Epstein. They felt comfortable with Miss England, right? She came over with that hoity-toity accent, the whole entire, persona. And these young girls who came from broken homes, who probably only seen English people like this on TV before, the really high-crust, rich kind of people. So this lady comes in and she shows interest in them, and she decides, hey, you know what? I got this guy I'd love for you to meet. You can make a few bucks, too. And then, well, we know what happens after that. She brings them to Jeffrey Epstein, and the nightmare begins. But it was a very, 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 very good cover for her to be so hoity-toity and to be so well-spoken and so educated. Nobody ever expects people like that to be the ones that are devious and draconian. But what we have learned, especially in this case, is that it seems like people like that are all disgusting and draconian. The British socialite, what? You mean fellow child abuser, general all-around scuzzbag, and bipedal serpent, is awaiting trial on allegations she helped Epstein groom young girls for sex while they were in a relationship in the 1990s. Again, we have to address that. They were not in a relationship, okay? Not the kind of relationship you think of. Not the kind of relationship you're engaged in with your significant other, that's for sure. They were partners, they were put together by Maxwell and Maxwell's handlers, and, well, not a pair of lovebirds, okay? Co-conspirators, for sure. Partners in crime? Absolutely. Did Ghislaine Maxwell maybe have a crush on Jeffrey Epstein? I don't know, maybe. But as far as being lovers or lovebirds or anything like that, just not the case. I really suggest you watch the show The Americans and see how those agents acted when they were put together and supposed to be a quote-unquote family. In my opinion, she was just as responsible as Jeffrey Epstein. I've said that from the very beginning, and I'm pretty sure we're on the right path considering all of the survivors are of the same mind. Ghislaine Maxwell was not just some, shrinking daisy. She was right in the middle of it. She had her job to do. Her portion of the leadership role was to make sure that they were welcomed into high society and to make sure the girls were comfortable. Meanwhile, Jeffrey was the front man for the quote-unquote business end of things. But both of them shared power. They had equal power, and they were both just as responsible for what happened throughout the years that they were active together, at least in my opinion. Maxwell said in a recently unsealed deposition, it was part of her job for the New York financier, pedophile, to find adult massage therapists. Adult massage therapists, huh? So, my question is this. You have to actually go and find adult massage therapists? Don't most of them have businesses or business cards or contact numbers or reviews, or it was word of mouth? You don't go looking for massage therapists. You know what, guys? As soon as I'm done with the podcast, I'm going to go hit the strip. I'm going to just go walk around and look for massage therapists. What does that even mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that she said that in a deposition is even more ridiculous. She should have been absolutely hammered over that remark. Really? I'd go out and look for massages? That's my job? Why don't you just hire one really damn good massage that knows the ins and outs of Jeffrey's body, that knows what he needs massaged, that he knows what needs to be worked on? Because it wasn't about the massages. It was about the power and the abuse of these young girls, in a lot of instances, high school age. Her accusers claim she groomed them to be abused by him with promises they would be helped in their careers. The daughter of deceased UK newspaper tycoon Robert Maxwell denies charges of trafficking and perjury and awaits trial in July. Some of the allegations against her are detailed in a new biography, The Spider, published recently by Crown, an imprint of Penguin Random House. So, we've talked about Barry Levine's book, The Spider, when it first came out, but it is unbelievable to me that some people still are not hip to the type of devious, disgusting bipedal serpent that Ghislaine Maxwell is and was. Author Barry Levine told Newsweek, the most troubling aspect of it is young girls and minors certainly will look at the woman figure as the protector, and they felt initially safe because of Maxwell's presence. That's a fact. We've heard the survivors talk about that. How being Ghislaine Maxwell being a woman offered them some false sense of security. And then once they were caught up in it, well, it was too late. They were already groomed. They were already involved. So Ghislaine Maxwell, even if that was her only role, say she wasn't a boss, right? Say that was her only role. That should have get her 100 years in prison, in my opinion, anyway. But unfortunately for her, that was not her only role. She was a boss. She had underlings. She was engaged in a leadership role in a criminal conspiracy. You know what that smells like to me, folks? I know it's a little stuffed up, but it sure smells like Rico to me. Her and Jeffrey were this couple that would mentor young girls, give them scholarships and so forth, help them through their troubles, give them money for their families. Her presence in that relationship certainly helped to recruit and groom a lot of these girls. Yeah, dead on, 100% accurate. It's really sad that a woman like Ghislaine Maxwell, who had the whole world at her fingertips, Oxford educated, came from a rich family, even though they were thieves. What, you didn't have a few bucks squirreled away? You still didn't have a trust fund? Stop it. But instead of using this incredible wealth and privilege for good, instead she teams up with Jeffrey Epstein and they engage in this disgusting, sordid child sex trafficking ring. So she has nobody to blame for her but herself. And the rest of these so-called elites and rich people who get caught up in this shit, I have no empathy for you. You could have been anywhere else in the world. You have all the money in the world. Your ass could have been sitting on the beach in Ibiza. But instead, you're dicking around with Jeffrey Epstein, hanging out in his living room, down in his beach house, down at Zorro Ranch. And then when it all comes to light, you want to cry crocodile tears and act like we should have empathy for you? Sorry, that's not going to occur. These women were not prepared that this woman would be as much of a predator and a monster as Jeffrey. From depositions and testimonies, it's clear that Ghislaine was just as much a predator as Jeffrey was. Yes, Speak the truth. Yell the gospel, Mr. Levine, because it is imperative that these legacy media outlets understand what we're dealing with. It's imperative that they know that Ghislaine Maxwell is not somebody that they should have empathy for or be sad that she doesn't have a bra in prison about, okay? She is not that kind of person. She should elicit no emotion from anybody, no empathy from anybody. She should be treated as any other inmate would. She'll have her day in court, she'll have a chance to defend her name, and then, when all the chips are laid out and all the cards are on the table, we'll see what's what, and we'll see who's telling the truth. I have a pretty good feeling that Ghislaine Maxwell is going to spend the rest of her life in prison. The Spider charts how Maxwell fell for Epstein when she moved to New York after the mysterious death of her father in 1991. Yeah, see, I don't agree with that. Again, while I think that there's a lot of good information in this book, anyone who is on the path that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were some sort of lovebirds, they're mistaken. They were put that, again, I hate to keep saying it, but if you're not familiar with the show The Americans, do yourself a favor and just watch a couple of episodes at least, and you'll understand what I'm talking about then. They're playing a role, right? They're actors. That's what spycraft is. You're acting like you're something you're not. And there are people that are very, very good at it. And Ghislaine Maxwell most certainly was one of those people. At the time, he was mourning the loss of his own father, Seymour Epstein, who died after a long illness in December that year, the book says. Levine said, "I spent a lot of time in the book trying to explore a little bit of what had been Maxwell's mindset when she first met Jeffrey Epstein. This was right after the violent death of her father, who had died going overboard on the yacht and so forth." Well, we don't know if it's violent death, right? He could have killed him. It could have been, an accident, right? Could have been, we don't know. But I would think that Robert Maxwell and all the bridges that he had burned, well, probably had that coming, right? When you're swimming around in that kind of world with that kind of murky water and those sort of seedy people, yeah, it doesn't take much to end up in the middle of the ocean. Ghislaine was completely dysfunctional when she first came to New York. She came under Jeffrey's wing, and Jeffrey took on this role of a father figure, lover, mentor, confidant to her, and so forth. For a time, I think Ghislaine was really under his spell. Yeah, see, I don't believe any of that. This is all part of the acting that I was just talking about. I think that these people, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, they understood that they had to play the role. They had to make pretend that they were a couple. They had to make pretend that they were together, or else this wouldn't have worked, right? They couldn't have had such a close business employee relationship. That wouldn't have worked well for the circles they're moving in. So we always have to keep that at the front of our thoughts as well. It's so much more than just, they were lovers, or there's so much more that goes into this cover, so much more that goes into an operation like this. She was also counting on Jeffrey to finance her and support her, and I think she realized very quickly that she was either going to live this life with him or not at all. That's why she seemingly just went along with this and groomed these women and recruited these young girls and so forth. Yeah, sorry, I don't agree with that. I think you're selling her a bit short and giving her a bit of an out almost, like it was all Epstein's fault, like she's suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. That is not the case. This is somebody who went into this with both eyes open, was involved with it with both eyes open, and then after Epstein was arrested, still maintained contact with him, still didn't come forward. She is not a victim. She is not some girl that fell in love with Jeffrey Epstein and circumstances led her here. I'm sorry, I will not bite, and I will not buy that narrative, and in fact, I will attack that narrative and challenge it anytime it's put forward. Levine has re-examined much of the mountainous evidence for himself, including revisiting the notes made by journalist Sharon Churcher during the first press interviews with Virginia Roberts, in which she said she was made to have sex with Prince Andrew. And he called on prosecutors to include the evidence of Maxwell's friend, Christina Oxenberg, cousin of Prince Andrew. Yeah, sorry, I don't I said it when she first came out with her stories. I don't believe Christina Oxenberg, not one bit. Sorry, her stories don't seem to jive with what's going on here. Sorry, doesn't make sense to me. Now, that doesn't mean she's not telling the truth, right? She might be telling a bit of the truth, but I just don't think she has much to add when it comes to this story, and just another person looking for some shine. He told Newsweek, in my book, I have what I think is a very compelling confession that took place in 1997. This was when Ghislaine invited Christina to celebrate the success of Christina's novel, Royal Blue. I write that the conversation turned to Maxwell's relationship with Epstein. She says Jeffrey is very important to me, and I need him to marry me. See, I don't believe that that's the case. I'm sorry. I can't believe that that's the case. I have seen no evidence of that. And when you speak to survivors who are really in the know, not third persons like Oxenberg, you understand very quickly that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein weren't in some kind of lovebird relationship. Oxenberg said that Maxwell confided that she was unable to keep up with Epstein's sexual appetite, and because of Epstein's needs that were impossible to meet, Maxwell felt obliged to bring in young girls to fulfill his sexual needs, according to Oxenberg's account of the conversation. Yeah, sorry, I don't buy that. I do not buy that. That was, she brought them around, no doubt about it, but that was all part of the plan. That was all part of laying the groundwork for the blackmail scheme. However, Levine is uncompromising in his assessment of Maxwell's role in the abuse surrounded Epstein. He said Jeffrey and Ghislaine kind of became a predatory Bonnie and Clyde of sorts. The most troubling thing about Ghislaine's involvement is that she was willing to go through this because she believed that she was in love with him and wanted him to marry her in some weird, warped way. She allowed all this to carry on in a way to please Jeffrey. Nope, sorry, I disagree with all of that. 100% disagree with it, honestly. She wasn't there and doing that because she was in love with Epstein. Sorry, that was not the case. She was there because it was beneficial to her. She was there because this was a play that was put into motion by her father, the person whose knee she grew up next to, learning spycraft, learning all of this bullshit world that they live in. So you're going to need to really come with a lot more evidence to convince me that she was Jeffrey Epstein's lover and they were in love and it was blissful and she did it all to make Jeffrey happy. Sorry, I'm not buying any of that. Okay? Now that might be the cover story that they laid, for sure. That is certainly the sort of devious-ass cover story that operatives for intelligence agencies, certainly something that they would do. They would institute a whole fake family, kids and all. Because that is how spycraft works. And anybody who thinks that Ghislaine Maxwell was just with Jeffrey Epstein because she was in love with him or that she thought she needed him to take care of her financially, well, you have not really been paying attention, have you? Because there is so much more there. And Ghislaine Maxwell is not just some woman who got caught up with Jeffrey Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell is a co-conspirator, a fellow child abuser, and a bipedal serpent. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. And to all of you who have donated to the PayPal, thank you very much. As for me, I'll be back tomorrow morning, folks, and we'll start all over again, and we will see what is going on in the disgusting, sordid world of Jeffrey Epstein.